Imagine the snap, not of a neck, but of a rope, thick and new, crumbling like ancient dust under an unseen hand. She falls, unscathed, into the shadow of the gallows, her eyes locked on the heavens as if daring God himself to explain. But when they try again, the platform shatters like Judgment Day thunder, leaving her standing amid the ruins, alive, untouched, a vessel of wrath or mercy? What force shielded this enslaved woman from death's grasp, turning hardened men into trembling cowards? In the sweltering haze of Maryland's eastern shore, where the Chesapeake Bay's brackish waters whispered secrets to the wind-scarred oaks, the year 1867 unfolded like a half-forgotten psalm laden with the weight of sin, redemption, and the inexorable pull of divine reckoning. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of blooming tobacco fields and the underlying rot of a society clinging to its chains, even as the echoes of emancipation faded into hollow promises. Talbot County misspelled in old records as Talbert, a clerical error that seemed to mock the land's own fractured history, sat like a reluctant sentinel between the Choptank River's lazy currents and the bay's vast, unforgiving expanse. Here, the old ways didn't die with the Civil War, they burrowed deeper, reshaping themselves into indentured contracts that bound souls as surely as iron shackles ever had. Freedom was a bitter jest, a word spat out in courtrooms where white men in starched collars decided the fates of those whose skin bore the marks of generations in bondage. The county's heartbeat in Easton, a town of red brick facades and white-columned grandeur, where the courthouse loomed like a temple to earthly justice, flawed, biased, and blind to the cries of the oppressed. On market days, the square teemed with life, wagons groaning under heaps of corn and wheat, horses stamping impatiently in the dust, the acrid tang of manure mingling with the sweet, pungent aroma of curing tobacco leaves. Merchants haggled in clipped tones, their Confederate sympathies hidden beneath union-mandated politeness, while black laborers navigated the crowds like ghosts, eyes averted, shoulders hunched, knowing that one wrong glance could summon the whip's ghost or worse. The churches, 3 of them, Baptist, Methodist, and Episcopal, rang their bells on Sundays, preaching sermons of forgiveness and eternal life, yet their pews remained segregated, a stark reminder that heaven's gates might swing wider than man's. Taverns outnumbered the houses of God, their dim interiors alive with the clink of glasses and the low murmur of resentful whispers about the lost cause and the uppity freedmen who dared dream of true liberty. 3 miles south of Easton, along a rutted dirt road that turned to treacherous slurry after every rain, lay the Harrow estate, a sprawling dominion of 800 acres where the land itself seemed steeped in biblical curses. Fields of tobacco stretched like verdant seas, their leaves rustling in the breeze like pages from a forbidden tome, while corn and wheat whispered promises of harvest amid the ever-present threat of blight. The main house rose on a gentle knoll, a Georgian colonial edifice built in 1789, its whitewashed brick glowing ethereally in the dawnlight, black shutters framing windows that had witnessed untold sins. 6 towering columns supported a wide front porch, where rocking chairs creaked like judgments waiting to fall, and atop the roof, a widow's walk stood sentinel, once used by Thomas Harrow's grandmother to scan the horizon for incoming ships, now a lonely perch overlooking fields worked by hands that knew no rest. The air here carried the sharp bite of wood smoke from the tobacco barns, mingled with the earthy musk of turned soil and the faint, metallic tang of sweat-soaked labor. Behind the grandeur lurked the shadows, the overseer's cottage, a squat 2-room affair with a crooked stone chimney belching gray plumes, the smokehouse where meats hung like pendants in a chamber of secrets, the carriage house with its rusted hinges groaning like tormented souls, and the row of 12 worker cabins, ramshackle hovels with leaking thatched roofs, dirt floors compacted by countless bare feet, and walls thin enough to let in the night's chill whispers. These were the same quarters that had housed enslaved families before the war, unchanged in their misery, symbols of a permanence that mocked the Emancipation Proclamation. Here, the spiritual weight pressed down heaviest, echoes of stolen lives, of families torn asunder like the rending of garments in ancient lamentations, of prayers muttered in the dark for deliverance from Pharaoh's modern heirs. Thomas Harrow, at 63, embodied the estate's unyielding spirit, a towering figure gone soft around the edges from years of indulgence, his white hair framing a face etched by sun, whiskey, and the unrepentant pride of old bloodlines. His ancestors had claimed this land as spoils from the Revolution, expanding it through cunning deals and alliances sealed in matrimonial beds. Inheriting in 1834, Thomas had ruled with the authority of a biblical patriarch, amassing wealth from tobacco exports that fed Europe's spices. At the war's height, he'd commanded 60 souls in bondage. Now, in 1867, 42 contract laborers toiled under terms that starved their bodies and spirits alike. His was a world of rigid hierarchies, where mercy was a weakness and control a divine right, yet beneath it all lurked the gnawing guilt of a man who sensed the scales of justice tipping against him. Into this shadowed realm was born Dina on a biting January night in 1831, her cries piercing the cabin's thin walls like a prophet's wail. No ledger noted her mother's name, though elders whispered of Ruth, a woman of quiet strength sold south when Dina was but 5, her absence a wound that never healed. Her father, Jacob, a stoic field hand, vanished to Georgia's plantations when she was 3, leaving behind fragments of legacy and possible half-siblings scattered like seeds on barren ground. Raised communally by weary hands, Dina learned survival's harsh liturgy: bolo, speak sparse, endure. From toddlerhood, she toddled through fields, plucking pests from tobacco plants, lugging water in buckets that chafed her tiny shoulders, gathering kindling under skies that promised storms. By 12, her days mirrored the adult's endless toil under the sun's merciless gaze, her hands calloused talismans of resilience, scarred like the stripes of Isaiah's suffering servant. At 15, the overseer Briggs, later claimed by cholera's swift retribution, noted her budding form and decreed her for house duties, a path fraught with peril for young women in bondage. Yet Providence intervened through Hattie, the aged head cook, a childless matriarch born on the estate, her 40 years in the main house a testament to cunning endurance. Seeing in Dina a spark, keen intellect, unyielding spirit, Hattie mentored her in the kitchen's alchemical arts, stirring pots over roaring fires, seasoning with herbs that masked the bitterness of existence. When Hattie succumbed to pneumonia's icy grip in 1851, Dina ascended to head cook at 20, inheriting a role laced with fragile privileges, scraps of better fare, a solitary cabin solitude, a whisper of respect among peers. But proximity to the Harrows was a double-edged sword, constant vigilance amid Margaret Harrow's icy tyranny. Her household ruled with the precision of a Puritan inquisitor, intolerant of flaws. And then there was William, the son, a petulant youth morphed into a venomous man, his cruelties foreshadowing deeper darkness. Dina cut an imposing figure, nearly 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with hands forged for labor yet capable of delicate precision. Her angular face, high cheekbones framing deep-set eyes, pierced like the gaze of an Old Testament seer, seeing through facades to the soul's hidden corruptions. Hair bound in cloth, she moved with ghostly efficiency, vanishing into backgrounds when threats loomed. Whispers followed her, she never smiled, her stare unraveled secrets, evoking the dread of one touched by the divine or the demonic. In her presence, men felt exposed, their sins laid bare like offerings on an altar, stirring unease that bordered on supernatural awe. The seeds of calamity, which would bloom into the Gallows grim theater, germinated long before March 14, 1867, though that dawn ignited the inferno. Their roots twisted back to April 1865, when William Harrow limped home from war's abyss, a spectral remnant of the dashing captain who'd ridden off in 1861, gray uniform gleaming, dreams of glory ablaze. At 26, he'd envisioned swift victory. Instead, 4 years etched horrors into his flesh and spirit. Antietam's fields, carpeted with the fallen like apocalyptic harvest, Gettysburg, where a cannon's roar claimed his left arm and a spray of blood and bone, leading to capture in 18 months in an Ohio prison, a frozen hell of starvation, disease, and guards' sadistic scorn. Released, he returned a hollow shell, rage festering like an unclean wound, insomnia banished only by laudanum's haze, days drowned in whiskey's fire. Nightmares assailed him, spectral battles replaying in screams and sweat, a torment akin to Job's afflictions, testing faith he never truly held. In January 1866, Thomas, clinging to paternal delusion, appointed William head overseer, hoping toil might redeem his shattered son. It was folly incarnate. William embraced the role with demonic fervor, his leather strap a serpent's tongue lashing for trifles, a crooked furrow, a misplaced tool, an imagined insolence. Workers learned his patterns, the thunder of his boots, the reek of spirits on his breath, and evaded like shadows fleeing light. Sheriff Porter, bound by old militia ties to Thomas, dismissed complaints from black voices as wind, deeming William a war's martyr worthy of grace, not chains. The system, like a corrupt temple, shielded its priests, perpetuating cycles of injustice that cried out for heavenly intervention. Dina navigated this minefield with practiced invisibility, her kitchen domain a sanctuary from William's patrols. Crossings were rare, his demands for sustenance in the main house's halls, but she minimized them, eyes downcast, responses monosyllabic, movements fluid as mist. 36 years had honed her instincts, a survival psalm etched into her bones. Yet on March 14's pre-dawn, fate or divine orchestration shattered the fragile peace. The kitchen, detached yet linked by a covered walkway, was a sweltering crucible, iron stove dominating like a pagan idol, walls soot-stained from endless fires, air dense with smoke, grease, and the savory ghosts of meals past. Up before cockcrow, Dina orchestrated breakfast's ritual, biscuits rising golden, bacon sizzling in cast iron, eggs frying, grits bubbling like primordial stew for Thomas's unyielding 7 o'clock expectation. But the wood, sodden from rains, resisted ignition. 20 minutes of coaxing yielded only smoldering frustration, delaying the coffee's boil. Time slipped away, tension coiling in her chest like a serpent ready to strike. Then William intruded, reeking of nocturnal excess, movements erratic, eyes glazed from whiskey's embrace. "Where's my coffee?" he bellowed, voice echoing off the low beams like a false prophet's decree. "Not ready, sir," Dina murmured, gaze fixed on the stove's glow. Fire was slow. "Minutes more. I want it now." His demand thundered, laced with the fury of a man wrestling inner demons. "Water's not boiled, sir. Can't brew without heat." Her tone steady, a calm amid the storm. What followed blurred into contested testimonies, a rash omen of tragedy veiled in spiritual enigma. Enraged, seeking dominion over flesh to quell his soul's chaos, William seized her arm, fingers digging like claws of possession. Instinct surged, she wrenched free, a reflexive bid for sanctity born of lifetimes evading violation. He lunged anew, but fate intervened, his boots skidded on the slick floor, residue from earlier washings. He plummeted, skull cracking against the stove's unyielding edge with a sickening thud resonant as the fall of Babel's tower, blood blooming like sacrificial wine on the flagstones. Dina froze, breath suspended, mind a whirlwind of dread and dawning horror. Witnesses converged, Sarah and Bess, house workers peering through grimy panes. Gardener Thomas, drawn by the commotion. They beheld her over the prone form, pallid, trembling. He slipped, she whispered, voice a fragile thread. "Grabbed me." I pulled, he slipped. Sarah and Bess corroborated, his aggression, her evasion, the accidental tumble, a mishap, not malice. Yet Thomas Harrow, gazing upon his son's lifeless husk after Dr. Vickers's futile ministrations, skull fractured, life ebbing by 11 o'clock, saw only vengeance's call. His heir, the continuation of lineage, extinguished, retribution demanded, echoing Cain's curse upon the innocent. Sheriff Porter descended that afternoon, deputies in tow, arresting Dina amid the bloodied kitchen's remnants. She yielded without protest, wiping hands on apron, accepting shackles like a martyr's crown. To the county jail they marched her, a decrepit bastion behind the courthouse, built in 1820, its 6 cells tombs of despair, cramped cots, reeking buckets, barred slits admitting chill drafts but scant light. The odor assaulted, molds decay, waste stench, hopelessness's pall. Isolated in the deepest cell, reserved for the damned, she awaited judgment. Jailer Pruitt, weathered at 68, delivered meager sustenance, cornbread, beans, averting eyes as if fearing her gaze's judgment. "Trial Monday," he muttered. 4 days. But in those confines, as shadows lengthened like accusing fingers, whispers of something greater stirred. Dina's composure unnerved the guards, her silence a sermon, her unblinking eyes mirrors reflecting soul's hidden guilts. Rumors spread through Easton's taverns, was this accident, or divine smiting? William's sins, war's atrocities, post-war cruelties, had they summoned retribution through her unwilling hand? Biblical echoes resounded, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord," a chilling prelude to the miracles ahead. As days blurred, the estate's workers gathered in hushed circles under moonlit skies, sharing tales of Dina's quiet power, how she'd healed ailments with herbal poultices whispered from African ancestors, how her prayers seemed to bend storms, how her presence evoked the Holy Ghost's fire or ancestral spirit's wrath. Thomas Harrow, alone in his study, poring over family Bibles yellowed with age, grappled with omens, a sudden blight on tobacco leaves, ravens perching ominously on the widow's walk, dreams of his son crying out from abyssal depths. Margaret, his wife, retreated to prayer closets, murmuring psalms of protection against unseen forces. The trial loomed, but already the air crackled with spiritual electricity. Witnesses rehearsed testimonies, yet doubt crept in, Sarah and Bess wavering under Thomas's glare, Thomas the gardener vanishing into the night, perhaps fleeing the moral quagmire. Sheriff Porter, pipe trembling in hand, sensed the unnatural. Dina's cell, though frigid, felt warmer than the rest, as if an invisible flame guarded her. In Easton's churches, preachers wove her story into sermons, cautionary tales of hubris, of reaping what one sows, of God's mysterious ways in sparing the lowly while felling the mighty. The black community, in secret gatherings by the Choptank's banks, sang spirituals of deliverance, "Go down, Moses," their voices rising like incense, invoking pharaonic falls and Red Sea partings. Yet deeper mysteries brewed. Unbeknownst to most, Dina had harbored secrets, a hidden Bible, smuggled pages where she'd learned to read in stolen midnight hours, inscribing verses of justice, "The Lord is a God of recompense," into her heart. Her cooking, infused with herbs of lore, perhaps carried subtle poisons of conscience, stirring unrest in those who partook. William's final meal, the night before? Prepared by her hands innocent, or laced with fate's subtle hand? As the sun set on those 4 days, Talbot County's fabric frayed. Overseers from neighboring estates, hardened by years of brutality, felt chills when her name was uttered, as if invoking a curse. One, a burly man named Ellis, dreamed of ropes uncoiling like serpents, refusing his touch. Another, Whitaker, swore he heard her voice in the wind, reciting indictments of their sins. The trial commenced under overcast skies, the courthouse packed with spectators, white landowners in fine suits, black laborers crammed in the balcony, the air electric with anticipation. Judge Harlan, a stern Union veteran, presided, his gavel falling like thunderclaps. Prosecutors painted Dina as a vengeful murderess, twisting her pull away into deliberate shove. Defense, a reluctant court-appointed lawyer, argued accident, bolstered by Sarah and Bess's faltering words. But midway, omens intruded, a sudden gust shattered a window, papers swirling like chaotic spirits, the prosecutor's voice cracked, stricken by inexplicable cough. Whispers rippled, divine intervention? The verdict came swift, guilty, hanging at dawn. Yet as they led her to the gallows, built hasty in the square, the first miracle unfolded. The rope, inspected morn fresh, snapped clean, not frayed, but parted as if by angelic blade. She dropped, neck pristine, gasping amid stunned silence. The crowd of 300 recoiled, crosses clutched, murmurs of which mingling with saint. Frantic, they erected a second scaffold, hemp thick as wrath. Noose reapplied, but before the trap sprung, timbers splintered, cracking like Sinai's thunder, platform collapsing in ruin. She stood amid debris, serene, while the sheriff's hands quaked, pipe unlit. Sunset brought refusal, every overseer in Talbot shunned her, faces pale with terror. Whispers of her gaze stripping souls bare, of dreams plagued by William's accusatory ghost. 6 days passed in limbo, no pardon, yet release came, shrouded in mystery. What transpired in those days? County records omit, but shadows hint, midnight visitations, Thomas Harrow confronting her cell, confessions spilling like penance. Visions of biblical plagues, frogs in wells, blood in streams afflicting the estate. Workers reporting apparitions, William's one-armed shade, begging forgiveness. Dina walked free, vanishing into legend, her story a parable of redemption's cost. Did God spare her as vessel of justice, or did ancestral curses shield her? In 1867's heat, Talbot learned, some sins demand reckoning, and some souls are untouchable by mortal hands. In the suffocating gloom of the Talbot County Jail, where the air hung stale with the mingled sense of damp stone, unwashed despair, and the faint, acrid tang of lantern smoke, Dina sat upon her narrow cot, a silhouette of quiet fortitude amid the encroaching darkness. The cell's iron bars cast elongated shadows across the dirt-streaked floor, like fingers of fate reaching out to claim her. She had nodded silently to jailer Pruitt's query, her voice a soft murmur when she finally spoke, "No, sir." No words for the world outside, no pleas for mercy, no messages to scatter like seeds in the wind. As the heavy door clanged shut behind him, echoing through the corridor like a final judgment, Dina remained still, her mind a whirlwind of reflections, tracing the threads of accident, accusation, and the inexorable pull of a destiny woven with threads of sin and redemption. Tears did not come, rage did not erupt. Instead, she embodied a biblical stoicism, akin to Job in his trials, enduring the weight of human injustice while her spirit communed with something greater, unseen. She knew the script of this tragedy all too well, etched into the collective memory of her people like verses from Lamentations. A black woman charged with a white man's death in post-war Maryland? The scales of earthly justice tipped inevitably toward condemnation, especially in Talbot County, where old grudges festered like open wounds beneath the veneer of Reconstruction. The trial loomed as mere theater, a ritual to sanctify the predetermined verdict, where prejudice masqueraded as law and mercy was a forgotten psalm. Over those 4 interminable days, Dina waited in isolation, the cell's chill seeping into her bones like the cold hand of doubt. Pruitt delivered meals twice daily, plain fare of cornbread, beans, and tepid water, more sustenance than many days in bondage had offered, yet tasting of ashes in her mouth. Transient prisoners shuffled in and out, drunks with bleary eyes and petty thieves. Nursing bruises, confined to the front cells and released swiftly, their freedoms a mocking contrast to her chains. They averted gazes from her shadowed corner, as if her impending doom carried a contagion of the soul, a spiritual plague that might infect their own fragile hopes. On Saturday, the Reverend Elijah Michaels arrived, his footsteps hesitant on the stone floor, Bible clutched like a talisman against the jail's profane aura. Pastor of Easton's White Baptist Church, he was a man in his 50s, hair thinning like autumn leaves, hands soft from a life of sermons rather than soil. His calling drove him to these grim visits, seeking to harvest souls on the brink of eternity, offering salvation's light to those teetering on damnation's edge. Standing before her bars, his voice quavered slightly as he requested to pray. "If you want to, Reverend," Dina replied, her tone even, devoid of desperation or defiance. He launched into fervent supplication, words flowing like a river, beseeching divine mercy for her transgressions, forgiveness for the blood on her hands, and eternal welcome despite earthly crimes. Dina listened, face a mask of inscrutability, her deep-set eyes reflecting the lantern's flicker like pools of midnight wisdom. When silence fell, he pressed, "Do you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior?" Her response came steady, "I've been a Christian my whole life, Reverend." Yet he persisted, probing for confession, for repentance's cathartic release. "I've got nothing to confess that you'd understand," she said, her words a gentle rebuke, laced with the weight of unspoken truths. Michaels frowned, his piety challenged, "You killed a man, a sin crying out for atonement." "I didn't kill anyone," she countered, voice unwavering as a prophet's decree. "He fell. It was an accident." Dismissing her claim, he urged soul preparation, invoking the ultimate judge beyond mortal courts. But as their eyes met, hers piercing, unflinching, a shiver traced his spine, a primal unease stirring within. It was as if she beheld not just his form, but the hidden hypocrisies, the fears veiled by scripture, the prejudices that tainted his gospel. "I'll pray on it," she conceded, releasing him from the moment's intensity. He departed unsettled, a disquiet gnawing at his core, as though he had been the penitent, scrutinized by a higher authority manifesting through her gaze. Twice more he returned before the trial, each encounter mirroring the first, prayers offered, confessions sought, departures marked by that same spiritual vertigo. In her presence, roles inverted, the minister felt judged, his soul's ledger examined under her quiet scrutiny. Whispers of divine reversal echoed in his mind, perhaps she was a vessel, like Esther before the king, or Deborah judging Israel, her innocence a testament to God's intervening hand amid man's flawed tribunals. Monday, March 18, brought the trial to the Talbot County Courthouse, a bastion of red brick and white columns, its clock tower piercing the sky like a finger pointing heavenward, tolling the hours with inexorable gravity. The second-floor courtroom soared with high ceilings and tall windows admitting shafts of dusty sunlight, illuminating rows of wooden benches worn smooth by generations of spectators. By 9 o'clock, the space brimmed with onlookers, farmers in homespun, merchants in tailored coats, women fanning themselves against the rising warmth, all drawn by the macabre allure of justice's spectacle, a black woman's fate hanging in the balance for a white man's demise. Judge Harlan Carrington presided, a septuagenarian relic of antebellum days, appointed in 1839, his black robes draping a frame unbowed by time. A former slaveholder, he viewed emancipation as folly, his stern visage and ready gavel symbols of unyielding tradition. Prosecutor Elias Stevens, at 29, burned with ambition, his 3 years at the bar honed on cases against black defendants, this one a ladder to notoriety. Defense counsel Amos Gaines, 34, and green, appointed mere days prior, fidgeted with nerves, his inexperience a fragile shield against the courtroom's lions. Dina occupied the defense table in her faded gray dress, hands folded serenely, expression a veil of composure. She ignored the gallery's stares, the front-row presence of Thomas and Margaret Harrow in mourning black, their grief twisted into vengeful resolve. Her focus remained forward, as if gazing into eternity's promise. The proceedings unfolded over 4 hours, a scripted farce where doubt never intruded. Stevens summoned Thomas Harrow first, who painted William as a saintly war hero, gentle, patient, scarred by patriotic sacrifice. He branded Dina resentful, her eyes harbors of malice, accusing her of deliberate murder with shifting weapons, a pot, a pan, details morphing like shadows. Gaines's cross-examination faltered under Carrington's interruptions, questions deemed irrelevant, the jury, 12 white men, war's embittered survivors, nodding sympathetically to Harrow's tale. Dr. Vickers followed, detailing the fatal skull fracture, conceding under Gaines's query that a fall could cause it, only for Stevens to redirect toward blunt force possibilities. Then came the defense witnesses, Sarah, Bess, and Gardner Thomas, recounting William's drunken aggression, Dina's evasion, the slippery floor's betrayal, and unequivocal accident. Stevens dismantled them ruthlessly, alleging lies, bias, dependency on Harrow's mercy, conspiracy. Their credibility evaporated like morning mist, the jury's skepticism palpable. Dina remained silent, Gaines deeming testimony perilous, her words ripe for distortion. Carrington's jury instructions dripped prejudice, intent inferable, black witnesses suspect, Dina's solitude with the victim damning. Deliberation spanned 20 minutes, the foreman's guilty rang like a death knell. Carrington decreed hanging on April 2, affording Harrow his public retribution, a spectacle. Rarer post-war, yet magnetic when race fueled the drama. Escorted back, Dina betrayed no turmoil, striding with dignity between deputies, head high, as if the verdict were but a fleeting storm. In the ensuing weeks, her cell became a locus of unease. Pruitt delivered meals wordlessly, retreating hastily, her aura repelling like a holy relic's power. Adjacent prisoners pleaded relocation, one drunkard's night-long rants of demons and inferno prompted early release, restoring uneasy quiet. Reverend Michaels's 3 further visits echoed prior futility, prayers, pleas for confession, departures laced with dread. On execution's eve, his desperation peaked, tomorrow, God's judgment, make peace. I am at peace, she affirmed. I've done no wrong. The jury deemed otherwise. They spoke inevitable lies, she replied, her words a mirror to systemic sin. He fled, confiding to his wife an unnatural essence in her foolishness, she chided, yet the seed of doubt took root. Meanwhile, Harrow orchestrated the grim theater, a new oak gallows in the square, trapdoor from Baltimore, executioner Cobb from Richmond, boasting 17 flawless hangs, a craftsman of death. Inspecting the structure, he calibrated a 7-foot drop for Dina's frame, ensuring swift neck snap, merciful in its brutality. He tested with grain sacks, rope, thick, unyielding hemp proving flawless. April 2 dawned crystalline, spring's warmth mocking the day's darkness. By 9, over 300 converged, families picnicking, vendors hawking lemonade and peanuts, children scampering amid the festive pall. The gallows loomed central, sun casting ominous shadows, Cobb's final checks meticulous. At 10, courthouse doors parted, Sheriff Porter flanked Dina with deputies, her dress soiled, wrists roped, gait steady. The crowd hushed, eyes devouring her ascent, 13 steps, each a rung toward Calvary. Atop, she surveyed the assembly, white faces dominant, black workers peripheral, Harrow's smugness, Michaels's clutched Bible, innocence curiosity. Porter proclaimed the sentence, death by hanging, mercy invoked. Cobb positioned the noose, not precise. As the hood descended, Dina's voice pierced the air resonant, prophetic, I didn't kill that man. He fell. But truth eludes you, punishment is your creed, hurt your sacrament. Harrow erupted in fury, proceed. The hood eclipsed her world, but her words lingered, seeds of conscience sown in fertile soil of guilt. Yet in this moment, spiritual undercurrents surged. Whispers among black onlookers evoked Moses' plagues, her words a curse invoking divine justice. Harrow felt a chill, as if ancestral ghosts stirred. Michaels pondered if she channeled the Holy Spirit's fire, her defiance a sign of innocence preserved. The rope, symbol of man's vengeance, poised against heaven's potential intervention, a tension building toward miracles unspoken. As the trapdoor beckoned, the square pulsed with anticipation, but deeper rhythms beat, themes of redemption, where the oppressed might rise like Lazarus, of sin's boomerang, striking the oppressor, of a woman's quiet faith reshaping history's narrative. Dina's legacy, forged in this crucible, whispered of eternal truths that justice, though delayed, descends like manna, and some souls bear marks of the divine, untouchable by mortal coils. The square of Easton pulsed with the breath of spring on April 2, 1867, the air sweet with blooming dogwood and the metallic tang of fierce wet. Over 300 souls had gathered beneath a sky so clear it mocked the darkness below, families picnicking on blankets, children sucking peppermint sticks, vendors hawking roasted peanuts and lemonade as if this were a county fair rather than a public reckoning. The new gallows stood central, oak timbers gleaming fresh, trapdoor oiled and silent, casting long shadows like accusing fingers across the packed earth. Executioner Cobb, a professional from Richmond with 17 flawless hangs to his name, had calibrated every detail, 7-foot drop for Dina's tall frame, not positioned behind the left ear for a clean break. The thick hemp rope, tested that morning with a grain sack of equivalent weight, hung ready, unyielding, a serpent poised to strike. Dina emerged from the courthouse doors at 10 sharp, flanked by Sheriff Porter and 2 deputies, her gray dress stained from weeks in the cell, wrists bound with coarse rope that chafed like reminders of bondage. She walked steadily, head high, no stumble, no plea. The crowd hushed as she ascended the 13 steps, each one echoing like a tolling bell, her bound hands making balance precarious yet her poise unbroken. Atop the platform, she stood over the trapdoor, gazing out across the sea of faces, white landowners in fine coats, black workers clustered at the rear with expressions carved from stone, Thomas Harrow front row with arms crossed in grim satisfaction, Reverend Michaels clutching his Bible like a shield. Porter intoned the sentence in a voice that carried over the square, guilty of murder, to hang by the neck until dead. May God have mercy. Cobb approached, noose in hand, adjusting it with practiced care. Before the black hood descended, Dina spoke clear, resonant, carrying to the edges of the throng, "I didn't kill that man. He fell. But you don't care about truth. You never have. You need someone to punish, someone to hurt, because that's all you know how to do." Harrow surged to his feet, face crimson. "Proceed." The hood fell, blotting out light, faces, world. Cobb stepped back. Miller, his young assistant, pulled the lever. The trapdoor yawned. Dina dropped. The rope snapped, not frayed, not worn, but parted clean as if cleaved by divine blade. A gunshot crack echoed across the square. She hit the ground beneath the platform hard on her side, gasping, "What ask you?" For an eternal heartbeat, silence reigned, then chaos erupted. Screams pierced the air, people surged forward, others recoiled, mothers clutched children close. Cobb scrambled down, pale as death, yanking the hood free. Dina's eyes opened wide, breathing ragged, neck bearing only a raw red welt where hemp had bitten. No broken vertebrae, no snapped life. Alive. Untouched. Cobb stared at the dangling remnant of rope and clean, fibers unraveled like judgment's thread, then at Dina, then back. His hands shook violently. Sheriff Porter climbed up, examined the line himself. "How is this possible?" he demanded, voice cracking. Cobb, slumped on the platform's edge, head in hands, "I tested it this morning. Sound as iron. It should have held." Whispers rippled, witchcraft, devil's work, God's hand. Black workers at the periphery stood motionless, eyes gleaming with something unspoken, perhaps recognition of ancestral protection, or the fulfillment of long-delayed justice. Porter, face ashen, made the call, "Rebuild. Use new rope. Try again that afternoon." They hauled Dina back to her cell while carpenters swarmed. This time, they chose the old hanging tree at town's edge, a massive oak, 2 centuries old, branches thick as torsos, 7 prior executions without failure. Cobb sourced rope from 3 suppliers, testing each brutally, pulling. Waiting, inspecting fiber by fiber. He selected the stoutest hemp, thick enough to bear a horse, flawless. By 3, the crowd had swollen to nearly 500, word of the morning's miracle spreading like wildfire through taverns and fields. Curiosity drew some, others whispered of omens, signs from heaven or hell. More black laborers from surrounding estates arrived, standing watchful at the rear. Dina was brought forth again, same calm stride, same distant gaze, as if death's door had opened twice and found her unworthy. No fear shadowed her features, no surprise at survival. She mounted the makeshift platform beneath the oak's vast limb, stood where directed. No speeches this time. Cobb, nerves frayed, placed the noose swiftly, stepping back as if her touch burned. Miller pulled the lever. The platform splintered, cracking like breaking bones, like the earth rending in apocalyptic fury. Timbers shattered outward in a storm of dust and shards. Dina tumbled amid the wreckage, coughing, coated in splinters. Miller clutched a broken arm, screaming. One carpenter bled from a forehead gash, another lay unconscious, skull struck by falling wood. Dina rose slowly, mere scrape on her cheek, nothing more. The rope swung empty above, intact, mocking. Silence fell heavier than before, profound, fearful. People backed away, crosses were traced in air, mothers shielded children's eyes. Voices rose, witchcraft. The devil guards his own. Cobb stood, dusted himself, declared he was finished. He gathered tools, claimed his fee from a stunned porter, and fled town that evening, later confiding in Richmond that Talbot harbored forces beyond mortal ken, curses he dared not challenge. Porter, amid the ruins, stared at Dina seated in dirt, hands bound, eyes steady and unreadable. The crowd dispersed hurriedly, as if fearing the protective force might turn next upon them. "Take her back," he muttered, voice hollow. That night, Harrow summoned counsel in his study's wood-paneled gloom, cigar smoke thick, whiskey poured heavy. Present, Porter, Judge Carrington, Prosecutor Stevens, Overseers Dutch, Farley, Quinn. Tension coiled like smoke. Harrow proposed chains tomorrow, strangulation if needed. Dutch, oldest and most scarred by brutality, refused. Chain won't snap her neck quick. She'll strangle slow, 10 minutes, gasping. You want to watch that? Harrow's reply was steel. She killed my son. She dies. Carrington shook his head. Impossible now. The crowd's fear, whispers of supernatural intervention, witchcraft, divine wrath, ancestral vengeance, could ignite like dry tinder. Another failure would brand them fools battling something greater. Quinn suggested quiet murder, escape attempt, a bullet. Porter recoiled, I'm no murderer. Debate circled, fear etched every face, even Quinn's, the merciless one, wavered. What if she truly bore protection? Unspoken, biblical echoes of Pharaoh's hardened heart, plagues descending, the innocent shielded while oppressors crumbled. No resolution came. Men departed swiftly into the night, horses galloping as if pursued. Harrow remained alone, staring at William's pre-war portrait, young, smiling, untouched by horror, drinking until dawn. He vowed patience, but retribution lingered. Yet events spiraled beyond plan. Next morning, Dutch quit, bound for Delaware, Quaker farm, better pay, better conscience. He wouldn't name the terror in his eyes. Farley followed, citing wife's illness, westward move. Quinn held till Monday, then Ohio brothers land, partnership too good to refuse. Within 10 days, no overseers remained. Replacements? None. Double wages, housing, profit shares offered in vain. Word had spread, the Harrow estate cursed, Dina untouchable. Men who'd whipped without remorse now trembled at her name. On the estate, discipline evaporated. Workers moved at their pace, took breaks, spoke freely. Some walked away from contracts, no pursuit. Harrow, 63 and soft from privilege, attempted management himself, futile. A new overseer from afar lasted 3 days, fleeing nightmares of a tall black woman whose eyes pierced walls, whose gaze summoned guilt's ghosts. By April's end, half the laborers gone. By May, 3/4. Fields lay fallow, tobacco rotted in barns, 3 generations' legacy crumbled. Control, once iron, dissolved like mist before dawn. In her cell, Dina waited, serene amid chaos she never sought. Whispers grew, divine retribution for generations of sin, echoing Exodus plagues or Daniel's lion's den, innocence preserved, oppressors undone. Her survival wasn't mere accident, it was a mirror held to souls, reflecting unrepented guilt. The estate's fall mirrored Pharaoh's Egypt, pride broken, power humbled, justice served not by man's hand, but by something eternal. What force shielded her? Biblical mercy for the afflicted? Ancestral spirits rising? Or God's quiet declaration, vengeance is mine? In Talbot's shadowed fields, the answer lingered like smoke, haunting, undeniable, a legacy of justice deferred no longer. In the days following the second catastrophe beneath the ancient oak, Talbot County's air thickened with unspoken dread. The jail's stone walls, once indifferent to suffering, now seemed to pulse with unease. Jailer Pruitt, once gruff, now haunted, delivered meals with averted eyes, tray clattering against the floor before he fled, hands trembling as he turned the key. The clang of iron echoed longer each time, as if the lock itself resisted sealing her in. Adjacent cells emptied swiftly, even drunks and thieves begged relocation, claiming chills that no blanket could chase, whispers of an unseen presence that watched from Dina's shadowed corner. The space beside hers remained vacant, a void like a held breath, as though the jail itself feared contagion from her unyielding survival. On the 6th day, Reverend Michaels returned, not with psalms of salvation, but questions born of sleepless nights. He stood beyond the bars, Bible pressed to chest like armor against an invisible foe, staring at her seated form. The lantern's flicker caught her steady gaze, deep as ancient wells. "What are you?" he asked, voice cracking on the edge of accusation and awe. Dina met his eyes without flinching. "I'm a woman who didn't kill anyone," she replied, calm as still water. "Same as I've always been." The rope broke. The platform collapsed. "That's not natural. Maybe your rope was rotten. Maybe your carpenters failed their craft." "I inspected that rope myself," Michaels pressed, voice rising. "It was sound. The platform built by county's finest. What happened defies reason." For the first time since chains first bound her wrists, Dina smiled, a small, knowing curve, cold as winter dawn, never reaching her eyes. "Then maybe," she said softly, words hanging like incense, "God doesn't want me dead." The air grew colder despite spring's warmth seeping through barred windows. Michaels felt it, a chill, tracing his spine, stirring doubts he'd long suppressed. He longed to counter with scripture, to insist divine mercy spared not the guilty, that Abraham's hand was stayed but Isaac lived innocent. Yet words failed. In her gaze he glimpsed his own hypocrisies, pious sermons preached while turning from the whip's echo, grace offered selectively. He departed wordless, footsteps hurried down the corridor. That evening, he saw Judge Carrington in his lamplit parlor. Sleep had fled the judge too, shadows under his eyes bespoke night's wrestling omens. Michaels spoke plainly, "Release her." The system had tried twice and failed twice. To persist invited ridicule or worse, revelation of deeper rot. Carrington, weary of omens and whispers, nodded assent. Morning light pierced the courthouse windows as Sheriff Porter approached Dina's cell. Keys turned with reluctant finality. "You're free to go," he said, voice flat, avoiding her eyes. No pardon inscribed, no explanation offered. Records would note only sentence suspended pending further review, a review that never materialized. The machinery of justice simply stalled, gears jammed by something intangible yet undeniable. Dina rose, smoothed her worn gray dress, and walked out into April's golden haze. No farewell to cellmates, no glance backward. She melted into Easton's bustling streets, wagons rumbling, merchants calling, black workers pausing mid-stride with knowing nods, and vanished. No return to Harrow's fields, no reclaiming of old ties. Whispers trailed her, a train to Baltimore's anonymity, southward to Virginia's hidden kin, northward to Pennsylvania's promise. Some swore she lingered in Talbot's woods or quiet black hamlets born of emancipation, a silent sentinel. But none pursued. Fear, or perhaps reverence, held them back. Thomas Harrow's empire unraveled like frayed rope. Without overseers, discipline dissolved. Workers moved at their own rhythm, took unaccustomed breaks, spoke freely. Many walked away from contracts, unbound and unchallenged. Harrow, at 63, attempted oversight himself, struggling through fields he'd never toiled, hands blistering on tools meant for others. A replacement from afar fled after 3 nights, tormented by dreams of a tall woman whose eyes pierced walls, whose survival indicted every lash he'd ever swung. By April's close, half the labor force gone. By May, 3/4. Tobacco withered untended, barns filled with rot instead of gold. The estate, 3 generations' pride, crumbled. In 1870, Harrow sold to a Baltimore speculator who converted fields to horse pastures. He retreated to the city with Margaret, dying of stroke 3 years later. The grand house stood vacant, decaying, until demolition in 1891 erased its columns and porches. Dina's story spread beyond Talbot, newspapers treating it as curiosity. Baltimore Sun's twice-hanged woman walks free, Philadelphia Inquirer's speculation on rope and timber flaws. None probed deeper: why overseers fled, why no man would serve Harrow, why oppression fractured against one woman's endurance. In black communities along the eastern shore, she became legend, a living parable of justice's quiet triumph. Told in hushed church gatherings, around hearth fires, from grandmother to grandchild, ropes breaking thrice in some tellings, prophecies uttered from the scaffold in others, angelic visitations in her cell. Embellishments grew like vines, but the heart endured. A woman the system demanded must perish, yet she walked free. Explanations multiplied. Sabotage? Impossible. Cobb's inspections flawless. Poor craftsmanship? Carpenters seasoned, failures unprecedented. Secret mercy from Porter? He swore to his 1889 grave he'd followed law precisely, shocked as any. Easton's courthouse endures, renovated yet standing. The jail vanished in 1923, replaced by asphalt. The oak succumbed to disease in 1897, felled. Harrow's fields now suburbia, Harrow meadows, tidy homes erasing tobacco rows. No marker commemorates, most residents ignorant of the woman whose survival toppled an empire. Yet in Eastern Shore black churches, the tale persists, oral scripture of resistance. Details shift: 3 ropes, prophecies, angels. Core unchanging: a woman condemned, expected to perish, demanded dead by unjust law, and who walked away. What transpired in those 6 days? Records silent, truth too raw for ink. A black woman defied execution twice. White authority, fearing folly, ridicule, unnamed dread, yielded. That fear, loss of control, admission of systemic sin, proved mightier than hemp or oak. Dina's questions echo: what when justice miscarries? When oppression's engine stalls? What strength sustains one on the scaffold twice, walking free? We may never know her thoughts atop those platforms, faith in survival, or dignified acceptance of fate her tormentors could never grasp. We know she endured against odds, expectations, a crushing system. Survival, in such darkness, becomes profoundest victory. What became of Dina after freedom's door opened? Faulty tools alone, or deeper forces? Share your thoughts below. If this tale chilled and stirred you, subscribe to Liturgy of Fear for more buried histories that question everything. The past holds secrets darker than we dare imagine, and we're unearthing them, one haunting story at a time.